On a remote island 10 miles off the Mississippi coast, a park ranger walking the shoreline found the body of an 18-year-old boy lying in the shallows, 2 days after he vanished from a 4th of July boat trip. What happened to Nolan Wills in those 2 days and in the hours before he went missing remains, weeks later, an open question. His family has commissioned their own autopsy. A grand jury is now reviewing the case, and in the vacuum of official information, rumors have spread faster than facts. This is what we know, this is what is still in dispute, and this is what remains unanswered. Nolan Xavier Wills was 18 years old, a black teenager from Ocean Springs, Mississippi. He had recently finished high school and was set to play football at Southwest Mississippi Community College. By all accounts, the 4th of July weekend of 2026 began the way countless holiday weekends do for teenagers along the Gulf Coast. A boat trip to a barrier island with friends he'd known since high school. On July 4, 2026, Nolan traveled by boat to Horn Island with a group of friends to celebrate the holiday. He was last seen sometime that afternoon, though the exact hour has not been established. At some point that day, the group returned to the mainland without him. He did not have his cell phone with him when the boat left, according to statements made by the family's attorney. Investigators have said that key questions remain about why Nolan didn't return with the group and why his phone was left behind, questions that, weeks later, still have not been publicly answered. Nolan was reported missing after his friends came back without him. What exactly happened on that island, who was present, what took place, and in what order, is still being reconstructed. Investigators have publicly requested that anyone with original, unedited photos or video from July 4 come forward, particularly anything showing alleged altercations or footage believed to include Nolan. That request itself tells us something. Authorities do not yet have a complete picture of the day. Once Nolan was reported missing, a search effort began involving local authorities and volunteer search and rescue organizations, including the United Cajun Navy. For 2 days, the question hung over the Mississippi coast. Where was Nolan Wills? On the morning of July 6, 2026, a National Park Service ranger discovered a body in the water just off the northwestern tip of Horn Island, close to where Nolan had last been seen. That afternoon, the Jackson County coroner confirmed through dental records that the body was Nolan Wills. A United Cajun Navy official who assisted in the search told reporters that, based on his understanding of wind and current patterns, the body appeared to have washed back near its original location. He said this suggested to him that Nolan had not been moved from the island and left elsewhere. This was his interpretation, not an official finding by investigators. Nolan's official autopsy was performed the following day, July 7, by the Mississippi State Medical Examiner's Office. As of the period covered in this documentary, the results of that state autopsy have not been publicly released. Jackson County Sheriff John Ledbetter has said investigators initially suspected the death may have involved drowning, while stressing that the investigation remains ongoing. According to Nolan's mother, Christine Wonsley, the sheriff told her within an hour of her son's body being recovered that he believed the death was accidental and that he did not see evidence of foul play. This account comes from Nolan's mother and has not been independently confirmed by a public statement from the sheriff. The FBI has assisted the Jackson County Sheriff's Office with certain aspects of the case, while county investigators continue to lead the investigation. Frustrated by what they described as a lack of information and inconsistencies in the case, Nolan's family retained civil rights attorney Ben Crump. His team said they were pursuing an independent review of the circumstances surrounding Nolan's death. The family also commissioned an independent, privately funded autopsy separate from the state's examination. It was conducted by forensic pathologist Dr. Roger Mitchell, president of the National Medical Association. Here is where the record becomes more complicated and where it's important to slow down. Dr. Mitchell's preliminary report described Nolan's cause and manner of death as undetermined, pending further investigation. The report noted real limitations. Because the state's autopsy had already been performed, Nolan's internal organs and certain neck structures had been removed and were not available for the second examination. Forensic experts describe this as a routine part of how second autopsies work, not evidence of wrongdoing. Because of this, Dr. Mitchell said he could not directly examine the airway and lungs for water or the stomach for its contents, steps that would normally help determine whether and how someone drowned. The report also noted a red discoloration on the back of Nolan's skull, which Dr. Mitchell called inconclusive and said required further investigation. It found no lacerations or fractures, though the report noted that the body's level of decomposition could make bruising difficult to detect. Based on these limitations, Dr. Mitchell wrote that he could not rule out non-accidental factors in Nolan's death. In the weeks since, online speculation has gone further than the actual autopsy report, with some posts claiming that organs, including Nolan's lungs, were deliberately missing as evidence of a cover-up, or that specific injuries prove foul play took place. Those specific claims have not been confirmed by official investigators, the state medical examiner, or the family's own pathologist, and they remain disputed. The independent report describes the organs as unavailable because they had already been examined and retained during the standard first autopsy, not as missing under suspicious circumstances. No official body has confirmed that any injury found on Nolan's body was caused by another person. On July 24, 2026, Jackson County District Attorney Angel Myers McIlrath announced that the evidence in Nolan's case would be presented to a grand jury, the body that will decide whether there is sufficient evidence that a crime occurred and whether anyone should be charged. McIlrath said this is standard procedure for nearly every death in the county and that Nolan's case is being handled no differently. She also said that Mississippi's professional conduct rules and grand jury secrecy laws limit what her office can disclose publicly while the investigation continues. As of the time covered in this documentary, no one has been charged in connection with Nolan Wills' death. Nolan's death has drawn national attention, in part because of the racial dynamics of the case. A young black man who traveled to the island with a group of friends who were largely white. Civil rights figures, including Ben Crump and Reverend Al Sharpton, have said the case reflects a broader pattern of insufficient scrutiny given to the deaths of young black men. Mississippi Governor Tate Reeves has said authorities are conducting a thorough investigation and has accused Crump and Sharpton of stoking division for political gain. These are competing public positions, not findings established by the investigation. Nolan Wills was 18 years old. He went to an island for a holiday weekend with people he'd known most of his life, and he did not come home. What we know for certain is limited. The timeline of his disappearance, the discovery of his body, the fact that 2 autopsies have so far failed to determine how he died, and the fact that a grand jury is now examining the evidence. What we do not know is significant. What happened on Horn Island on July 4, whether Nolan's death was an accident, and whether anyone bears responsibility for it. The investigation is ongoing, no charges have been filed, and until the evidence is fully examined by investigators and ultimately by a grand jury, conclusions about what happened to Nolan Wills remain just that, conclusions, not facts.